So welcome everybody. My name is Michael Chavez. Welcome to the From Compliance to Profitability webinar hosted by Platinum Controls and Sendero Energy Services. Like I said, I'm Michael Chavez. I'm our Vice President of Growth here at Platinum. Been with Platinum just a short time, a little over 6 months, but I'm not new to the industry. Started out working for an operator down in the Eagle Ford on automation projects, and over the past few years have been involved more on the emissions side of our industry. But luckily, I won't be doing the majority of the talking today. I'm actually joined by two real industry subject matter experts today, Brandon Dyke from Platinum and David Stewart from Sendero. Why don't you guys give us a little bit of overview of your background real quick? Brandon, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, thanks, Michael. Good morning, everyone. My name is Brandon Dyke. I'm the Director of Engineering with Platinum Control. I lead Platinum's engineering and design teams responsible for vapor recovery compression packages. I joined the team back in 22, focusing on product development, and have since built a team that focuses on connecting engineering design with live operational data, creating a feedback to help us maximize our equipment performance. So I've spent a number of years in oil and gas, everything from field engineering to equipment design. So I've been around for a while, and now I'm here with Platinum, and excited for what I do. So
awesome. David, our esteemed guest, do you mind giving us a little bit of your extensive background?
Sure, thanks, Michael. Yeah, I'm David Stewart. I'm president and co-founder of the environmental division of Sendero Energy Solutions. We're a Permian-based and Rockies-based environmental company that provides services to the oil and gas industry and other energy industries in the environmental realm. My background includes working as an executive for 3 different E&Ps throughout the last 20 years. So I bring an industry perspective. And then prior to that, I spent about 17 years in air quality measurement, and emissions control. So I'm happy to be here and look forward to the discussion.
Well, thank you very much for being here. Really quickly, not a sales overview at all, but just so you understand who Platinum is. We are a Permian-based company that specializes in the manufacturing and fabrication engineering of vapor recovery units and burner management systems. But we go pretty far beyond that. So we have an extensive field team, very experienced, that's out there 24/7, making sure our units are up and running and doing what it is they're supposed to for our clients. We even have a software platform specifically built for remotely monitoring VRUs and keeping up with their uptime and performance. So that's a little bit about us and why we're hosting today's webinar. David, if you don't mind, one more time, maybe talking a little bit about what Sendero does as well.
Sure. Sendero Energy Solutions is part of a larger organization. It's been around 40 years in the Permian. But the energy solutions part is focused on helping industry comply with rules and regulations, get ahead of the game, get their permitting things approved. You can see in this list, we have 3 categories of services. The first one being emissions monitoring. We do direct greenhouse gas emissions and other measurement on your locations. We can do a lot with fugitive emissions quantification surveys, your LDAR programs, and also helping companies comply with OGMP if they so choose to. We do direct measurement supporting that program. The second category is just basic environmental services. This starts with environmental due diligence and integrating assets as people buy them so that they don't have a hiccup in their compliance program, and really providing that industry insider information to help integrate new purchases into existing portfolios. The third one is our carbon advisory service. We really are focused on the other part of our business does a lot of plugging and abandonment. And so we support the reclamation, remediation, all the aspects to support plugging, as well as doing some work around carbon credit development, even though that's still in its infancy, but it's part of the overall vision.
Yeah.
I'll stop.
No, that's awesome. In your last webinar about the carbon credits was really interesting. So it's a fascinating topic. Well, let's shift gears and kind of set the stage here. So, the webinar topic is from compliance to profitability, and the reason for that is, as everyone knows, there's quite a bit of regulatory flux or regulations in flux right now, not only at the federal level that I think has been in the news quite a bit lately, but even at the state level. And there's such a wide mixture of state by state regulations that I think it's really keeping operators on their toes right now. But then we also have international frameworks and guidelines for this that have changed over the years, and maybe seen a little bit of setback there as well. David, this is much more up your alley in terms of what's been going on over the past couple of years on the regulation front, both federally and with states. Do you have anything to add to this about and help paint the picture of why operators are caring less about that and more about profitability?
Sure, it's just been a dramatic shift with the new administration we have, good or bad, but it's been very interesting to watch take place, and it's been pretty disruptive because a lot of companies have built systems around doing things like greenhouse gas reporting and all that. Now some of those needs are going away. So I provided a list here on the screen, but I'll just touch on a couple of them that I think is most important. The subpart W reporting rule for greenhouse gas emissions is being rolled back. Likely, there's still debate on it, whether it's going to continue or not, but it's looking like that's going to happen. The major one I'll mention is the GHG endangerment finding. This is being challenged. And really why that's so important is they underpin all other US climate legislation. So if the endangerment finding gets reversed, really none of the other rules and regulations that are regarding climate change really have a backing legislatively going forward. The other one I'll just mention is, the federal government is rolling back things, but states are not necessarily rolling back things. So as an operator, you're going to get a confusing mix of signals from regulators. The EPA is dialing back, but a lot of the states are not dialing back at all. So New Mexico, Colorado, California, and Pennsylvania are continuing with their efforts to enforce and update their climate-related rules. Internationally, it's an interesting picture. There's some scaling back. OGMP 2.0 seems to be getting less attention these days and less participation, but who knows where that's going to head. And then that carbon border adjustment mechanism is really an interesting development. It was going to drive a lot of GHG emissions reporting and reductions in the US for the LNG side. We don't know where for sure that's heading right now, given some major operators are challenging it. And I think the most important thing is to understand that when we talk about vapor recovery units, we're not just talking about greenhouse gas emissions capture. We're talking about volatile organic compound capture and other pollutant captures that are still in effect and will continue to be in effect. So yeah, I'll stop there.
No, great points. I mean, I think I just saw in the news that they're launching another satellite, or another satellite just got funded. So, I mean, if that kind of money is going up into the sky to look for these things, I don't see it going away forever. But with that being said, it is changing the way operators are operating here in the short term and what their priorities are. So what we've seen, I think from a lot of people in the industry is, hey, I'm not going to give up on these plans. We still have we have VRUs out there. We're going to continue, trying to cut back on emissions as hard as we can. But at the end of the day, if there's no fine associated with it, we've got to stay profitable to stay in business and keep the lights on. So, with that being said, I think, there's kind of a spread across the board of what the strategies are with VRUs. But, Brandon, from an engineering standpoint, when you see in the field, operators include a VRU into their into their production and, beforehand, instead of just trying to add that in, after the fact or as after sight? What are some of the takeaways you're seeing from operators and the way they're able to operate?
Yeah, so I think that's been something that shifted over the past couple of years since I've been here, and something that I'm noticing quite a bit of difference in when it comes to uptime and performance of recovery packages. Designing facilities and keeping that forefront in mind really helps create an environment that's conducive for the operation of the VRU. Meaning there's quite a few things such as, properly rated tanks, vessels, efficient piping, proper routing, suction discharge side of accommodations within your facility for upsets or shut-ins, should something happen. All of these things, while may seem somewhat minor, are actually really important when it comes to, proper and efficient operation of the VRUs. And we've really noticed a difference in how VRUs in general, how compression packages operate when they're proactively designed into the operation of the facility versus just being used in a reactive, from a reactive perspective. So pretty big difference there, which is really important now, especially when you consider the fact that, profitability and stuff like this is starting to become more kind of front of the mind. And so when you take the design of these facilities in mind and proactively use this stuff, it'll set you up for success versus trying to plug something in to try to take care of something downstream and then dealing with a bunch of issues. So
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, so before transitioning to what we consider kind of next gen vapor recovery, we have a poll that we'd like to send to the audience. So even if you're not submitting questions right now, we're going to force it on you. I'm going to see if this works. I'm very curious what the audience thinks about this poll. So what is your biggest challenge for maintaining VRU uptime? So if you don't have VRUs, for example, we've got an answer for that. But if you do, we're very interested in what your biggest challenges are. Got a couple of got a submission already. I'll let that sit here for another 30 seconds or so to give people a chance to answer. But any wagers, David or Brandon, what the winning result is going to be?
I think it's down to operating costs and efficiency in my mind, but
yeah, I would say ever-changing production parameters is a big one, especially with the way facilities are being designed nowadays to take in large amounts of wells. So you'll have huge surges at the beginning with big decline and big equipment needed at the front end and not so much later. So there's a lot of stuff going on there.
Yeah, that would actually be my guess as well. Okay, I just saw a couple more submissions here at the last second. I'm going to end the poll in about 5 seconds. So if you've got a chance to submit, go ahead. And then I think we're going to be able to even share the results here. Okay, we've got a tie. We'll need a tiebreaker, but let me end it and see what this does here. Okay, so it's a three-way tie between ever-changing production parameters, operating costs and efficiency, and compressor reliability. I'm actually not surprised by that. Well, cool. Thank you guys very much for your participation. That does make a lot of sense, these results. It matches what we hear from folks out in the field. David, I'm sure that matches what you're hearing from your clients as well, huh?
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Let's keep moving. So we're transitioning to kind of what next gen vapor recovery is, and we think that's built up on three main pillars, and we'll describe what that is. But from a high level, historically VRUs have just been kind of static, maybe even engineered for a one-size-fits-all approach, set out in the field, not remotely monitored, maybe it was even done for a compliance reason, and you hope that when you come back in 2 weeks, it's still running. But it's a lot more than that, and it can have a lot more benefits if you go about it in the right way. So what we're going to break down here is what we see as ways operators can take steps into becoming this next gen, taking advantage of next gen vapor recovery unit, whether you're working with a service company or whether you have VRUs that you own and operate yourself. Okay, so the first pillar being data-driven uptime. This is speaking directly to the ability to remotely monitor your VRUs, and when it comes to remotely monitoring the critical points that give you as much insight as possible on that VRU. Brandon, this is kind of one of your babies. When you engineer a VRU to go out, we're also to be able to monitor to see what's going on with it. Do you want to talk to what some of these points are doing and what some of the value we get from monitoring these points?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is really one of the biggest things I was involved in when I first came on with Platinum. This is kind of bridging the gap between design and performance. Being able to see the way your equipment operates gives you a lot of data, a lot of insight. We have all these different transmitters, all these different sensor points we can take, and if you're not seeing it, then it really kind of leaves you up to making assumptions and having to use context to really kind of try to put things together. So Pulse really bridges the gap between the design and real-time performance. Critical data points, helps provide the insight into your operating conditions, uptime, your efficiencies, how your facility's behaving, things that you weren't able to see or do previously without having boots on the ground. We're now able to do 24/7 all the time. We, depending on what the data point is, you can get anywhere from 1 to 15 minutes to once a day. Just kind of depends on what you're looking to do there. It's really neat, and one of the things that it's been really cool to kind of see on paper has been being able to see the performance and how the equipment's operating 24/7. Again, you can say it like that, but when you can actually pull up your graphs and you can look and see your trends on pressure, temperature, it's pretty interesting to be able to see how stuff operates, even just night and day difference depending on temperature fluctuation, things like that. The real-time data really helps provide your ability to increase and improve your response time for upsets, surges, facility upsets due to shut-ins, different things like that. We're seeing that stuff a lot quicker than we were before, right? So we're getting alerts, we're sending texts out, we've got automated systems, right? So we're getting an alert in, it's getting shifted right over to our techs leaving, they're on the road before anybody out there even knows, right? So that's what Pulse is able to do, bringing that data in. Data collection and reporting can help your teams ensure that you're operating within equipment and application design parameters, your suction pressures, right? Ensuring that you're actually keeping it below where your relief valves are set in your tanks, ensuring you're not emitting. You've got hard time data to show that you never went over above whatever your relief valves are set at, right? If anybody ever questions you. It's big when it comes to equipment reliability. Prime example is temperature control. Out in the field, this equipment, very high spec equipment being used in very harsh conditions. Temperature control is really important, with the gas and stuff that we're pulling off, ensuring that we're not contaminating our oil systems in these vapor recovery packages, diluting them with condensate, different things like that. When night comes around, the flash goes down, the unit slows down, making sure that you're able to maintain your temperature, not staying below. You can actually see, right? Set points mean one thing, but how is the equipment actually, responding to that? So that's really important there. Helps increase your reliability to prevent, premature equipment failures, bearing failures, things like that. Big deal. next, kind of taking it to the next step with some of the things that we've been doing and we're starting to do more and more is analyzing equipment failure trends, predicting future failures, allowing for planned maintenance versus downtime, right? So once you start to see certain indicators in the performance of your equipment, you can start to make plans for larger types of repairs, maintenance, things that would tip, if you get a compressor down and the first one that sees it is the operator on site, well, now you're making a phone call, you're talking 2, 3, 4 days. If we're seeing this stuff in our equipment trends, then we can start to make plans for it. It can become a planned downtime event, maintenance event. We can swap it out, get it going. You can create a 4-day downtime event really to keep it within 4 hours if you know what's going on. We've also got things that, as we're looking into the future, things we're starting to explore, such as using algorithms and AI to help us proactively find tattletales in our equipment to help us increase our performance, indicating when we're underloaded, overloaded, different things like that, being able to see if there's issues with the way the equipment's set up, tuning it, making sure we're being more efficient, et cetera. So the data is great, right? And in this world where we're obsessed with analytics and data and stuff, I mean, being able to use this to drive equipment performance and uptime and profitability, I mean, it's just this is where it's headed. So this is good stuff.
That's awesome. That's a great overview. It sounds like it helps operators gain insights on their site and the way their equipment is operating. It sounds like for maintenance personnel, it's integral to being able to hit the field on a managed by exception basis and go take a look at the sites that need it the most, and then it's helping you engineer the most robust solution. David, I'm curious from your client standpoint, from more of the compliance reporting side, do you see any points that we're monitoring through Pulse that would be important to your clients as well?
Absolutely. The data that Pulse is collecting is absolutely critical to air compliance determination. When I think about data, I think about evidence, right? It is evidence of compliance if you can present the data in a way that defends your position. I've been down the path so many times of enforcement actions being levied by state or federal regulators that are really based on no data. And so when you can provide data to defend yourself, it is an absolute game changer when it comes to defending yourself against allegations that may or may not be true. So the data that Pulse is collecting is critical to show your uptime and to show characteristics of pressure and temperature that may be affecting things, and really allows the ability to defend yourself against claims of, say, fugitive emissions that may or may not be there, but it definitely gives you a lot of evidence to work with.
Awesome. We had a question come in at the same time you were explaining that I think you may have even answered slightly. Do you mind just expanding a little bit? So the question is, how are your clients using VRU data, pressures, temps, uptime, et cetera, to satisfy state reporting or LDAR OGMP needs? So I think you answered a lot of that.
Yeah, I think the key there is uptime means you're controlling your emissions points at that time, for that period of time. So you can actually do real-time emission calculations to show what the actual emissions are at any given point in time. Whereas without that data, you can't reliably do that, and you're kind of guessing. And so when you're talking about things like OGMP level 5, it requires actual measurement, and that's what Pulse does, is actually measures parameters that allows you to meet those requirements of a level 5 certification under OGMP. That's not required by state or federal regulators here in the US, but when you're actually going and defend yourself against a claim of, say, a fugitive emission event, it is really helpful to know actually what your VRU has been doing, how it's been operating, under what conditions has it been upsetting, how fast are you getting it back up and running? Those types of things are absolutely critical.
Awesome. And thank you very much for the question. Keep them coming at any point in time. Don't be shy. Okay, so we'll keep moving on through the 3 pillars. That was a great overview of the data-driven uptime need for next-gen VRUs. We also think another need is a flexible deployment solution. So I don't think a lot of listeners maybe understand what exactly a flexible deployment solution is, but here at Platinum, what we consider part of our flexible fleet program is allowing operators to move and transition VRUs where they're truly the best fit. For example, if like here on the chart, if a large VRU is needed at the start of a well early on in its high production, and then as that well starts to decline, maybe that's too much of a need and it's a waste, but it also has some operational impacts if you have an oversized VRU. Being able to move that maybe over to another new well and bring in a smaller unit is the flexibility operators need, it seems like right now, to stay on top of everything. But I guess, David, throwing it back to you, you've seen clients that, for example, are acquiring new assets. How have you seen the impact of a decline curve affect VRU and the rest of the way that well operates?
Sure. Well, it affects directly your OpEx, LOE, and ability to control the emissions. So initial facility designs are typically way oversized for the IP of the wells that they're bringing on, and but they have to be oversized initially, and then you can see the decline rate in the curve there. That's pretty standard for a U.S. unconventional well. And so your need for vapor recovery capacity drops off quickly over time. And we've all envisioned the ability to kind of change and modify the facility over time that matches the production volumes. But in reality, that's difficult. It costs money to change equipment out, swap it out. But the VRU is one thing, and the way you guys are managing this is really helpful because it is truly a swap that can occur pretty quickly and actually help the OpEx LOE cost.
Yeah, that's a great way of explaining it. Brandon, can you give just a little bit of insight about how we go about that, assessing whether a site needs maybe even a reduction in compression?
Yeah, so we have a few customers doing this actively now, and in fact, over the past couple of years, we've taken on a couple pretty sizable projects for customers where we've resized a bunch of their facilities, brought in smaller units, taken the larger ones, moved them to other newer facilities, and just kind of did like a reshuffle, if you want to call it that. So yeah, I mean, Pulse is great for this. Again, kind of as I was saying, if we log on and see that our uptime's going down and we start to look into it and notice that, hey, we're pulling that pressure down really quick, and the compressor speed is really low, and our recycle turn down valve is being utilized quite a bit, and there's various other indicators we can look at there. We can make a pretty quick determination that, hey, it looks like we may be oversized here. And in a lot of situations, we have customers that are ordering these specifically for, keeping this in mind. We're doing 2, 3, 4 units with a redundancy. It doesn't take long, and we're sitting here looking at 2 or 3 of them that aren't being used anymore, and so talk to the customer, figure out a place to put them somewhere else, and we go from there. Pretty easy ordeal. It's pretty simple for the most part. There's a day or so and we get swapped out. But yeah, I mean, very, very active for our customers that are using this. In fact, just the other day we had one come in. We looked at where we went from 150 horsepower, just wasn't being utilized anymore, and we looked at it and we said, hey, based on what we're seeing, we can go down to 50 horsepower here. So we take that unit, move it off, put 50 in, put the 150 to use somewhere else. So yeah, it's critical, again, especially in these situations where these facilities are designed to take in these so many of these wells, you know, we're seeing huge facilities created nowadays, and it's just dropping off quick. And yeah, so this is really key. You know, of course, everybody wants a piece of equipment that can be, you know, designed to do it all, right? Reality is that compressors, packages, depending on size, just really can't, right? There are limitations to equipment, and so just ensuring that we keep those limitations in mind and setting ourselves up for success. I mean, you know, this ability to be flexible is really key.
Yep. Awesome. Well, since I've got you talking, Brandon, the third pillar that when we think of next gen VRUs is definitely the precision engineering. You know, engineered to spec, not only the first time, but as you just mentioned, ongoing, and keeping an eye on how they operate and what could potentially be a better solution. Do you want to expand on that and how you go about that process for our clients?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing and the foundation that we kind of base everything off of is, you know, just listen to the customer, right? So try to figure out what the customer needs, what the customer wants, what the application needs. Cookie cutter off the shelf stuff doesn't always work. You know, you end up in situations where you've got, you know, compressors that motors that are undersized, they're too large, that there's things on the skid that just aren't working. You know, your liquid removal doesn't work well. Sometimes it can be, it sounds nice, right? To just take something off the shelf, plug it in and play, but the reality of it, it doesn't always work. So these facilities are ever changing, right? I mean, with some of our customers, we've gone every year, there's facility design changes in the way that they're doing this stuff. And so a VRU design for one facility is, you know, the new revision of their facility. It's just not, it's not set up ideally for it, right? So biggest thing is ensuring that keep the customer in mind with these things. It's kind of the way we like to take it. Ensuring that from everything from, you know, piping setup to you know, liquid removal, as minute as it sounds on the skid, can be really important to the efficiencies. So, and we also take into account the facility as well, right? Like it all plays a part. It all each has its own responsibility. So, you know, understanding what's set up, you know, upstream of the VRU, how are the pressures, what's the operating philosophy here, where are we going with this, what are we trying to keep it under, all very important things. Downstream too, right? Accommodations for upsets. What are we doing if we're getting shut in? What are we doing with the compressor? Where are we going? Are we flaring? Are we moving to another vessel? All these things are really important because it can really impact everything upstream of the VRU. If you get shut in, you're not ready for it, you blow down to a flare, you push all the oil out of your unit, and all of a sudden your compressor's running with no oil in it, you're down. Well, now you're flaring upstream, your reliefs are popping everywhere, right? So it's all just kind of, it's all intertwined. And so once you have a good understanding of how the customer wants to operate, what they're looking to do, it can really give you what you need in order to tailor a compression package for them. So I think that's the biggest thing there.
That last point is a great point too. Understanding the customer's needs to that level. David, you and Sendero have a huge hand in that, in helping operators understand not only their permitting requirements, but how their existing equipment may impact that. I'm actually thinking of a particular case in where we have a client together in which, you know, that was the scenario. Can you explain that process a little bit? You know, maybe keeping them private, but kind of how you went about that and how it led to us working together.
Sure. Yeah, when we go in and help companies evaluate assets, we do it a little bit differently than a typical environmental company. We do follow phase one requirements, but we add a lot of operational analysis. And the particular case you're mentioning, we noticed the VRUs weren't operating. We compared it to the emission permit limits, what they're allowable to operate with and without, and help them understand exactly what they need so they can optimize that asset from a cost efficiency standpoint with regards to VRUs. The other thing I'll mention is that, a lot of times people don't understand there's a lot of allowable emissions that occur. We build in downtime for VRU units into the air permitting effort, and that's by design, so that if there is an event like Brandon mentioned where we're popping off pressure relief valves and someone notices that, that's not necessarily always non-compliance. It may just be a need to report that event. But the quicker you can bring the VRU back up, the better. And I think with this new customer you're referring to, having quality VRUs in place are really going to help them optimize that location, those locations going forward. So
awesome. Okay, so before transitioning to the next slide, I actually have another poll here that I want to get out to the audience. We really appreciate your participation. This one's a little bit more geared towards regulations. So there is a divided opinion on elimination of subpart W reporting. Which answer below best describes your view? So, I've heard from a number of operators. I was just at MDEL a few weeks ago, and a number of the larger end and some small private operators said no change. We're going to continue tracking our emissions. We think this will come back with the next administration, and don't want to be caught flat-footed. But there was a fair amount of operators who flat out said, look, we support it, but without that requirement, our priorities are elsewhere. So we've definitely seen the spectrum. I'm curious. Looks like we've got another tie. I'm gonna keep yapping until we get a tiebreaker on this one. We've got a 50-50. Give maybe 5 more seconds here and let everybody get in. Okay, we're ending with another tie. So it's 50-50. Let me share the results here. Makes sense. I mean, I would say that it's hard to guess at MDEL what the majority was there, but I think the more vocal people were people who said they don't plan on changing. So I did find that interesting. Okay, well, let's keep moving along here. So David, you just mentioned a specific use case in which we really pair up between Platinum and Sendero really well. I wanted to kind of go over that a little bit here, just to kind of help people understand, where your services are and where they end and where we take over. There's really no overlap and a lot of great synergy there. Do you want to give just kind of a quick overview of how you see that?
Sure. We represent the operator in all these matters, and when we go in and do the air permits for them or evaluate compliance with existing air permits, the key is the ProMax calculations and the peak vapor flow rates, and we use software to help us do that. And it's really about informing the operators where they can be. And VRUs are often, if not always, the best option to reduce emissions below a permitting threshold that they don't want to cross. There's different thresholds in different states. A lot of states have permit by rules. If you can get under those numbers, you have less requirements potentially. And then, of course, everybody wants to stay under Title V, which is the big federal requirement. And so if you can stay under Title V, you're going to save money as a company. You're going to save hassle from a compliance perspective and a reporting perspective. So it's really informing the customer about where they're at from an emissions standpoint and what are the consequences of, say, not adding a VRU, and what are the benefits of adding a VRU, and then building in that downtime, like I said, so that there is ability to do things in case of a maintenance event or an unplanned outage or anything like that.
Awesome. Okay. There's a couple questions submitted. We're about to move to the Q&A portion of the webinar. If you don't mind, for those in the audience, try to submit any questions you've been holding back, but in the meantime, I will get started. So David, you just mentioned, you know, I guess changing and regulate. I'm trying to see how this question fits that. Tell you what, I'm gonna move to the next question and think about how to ask that later. Okay, the next one. Given the difference in regulatory enforcement, what difference has David seen in states like Texas versus New Mexico in terms of operator sentiment? So
Well, I think New Mexico's one case, which I'll address first, and they're really putting the pedal to the metal on enforcement in New Mexico and continuing on, even developing new potential climate-related requirements. Increasing bonding is their latest thing that they're discussing, and so really nothing's been relaxed in New Mexico, even though they probably don't have as much support from EPA Region 6 now as they did in the past. As far as Texas goes, Texas is a steady course. They continue to enforce and operate under the laws that they have. I don't see a lot changing there necessarily as far as inspections or decreasing regulatory enforcement. I think TCEQ's maintained a very consistent stance and will continue to do so.
Awesome. This one is probably, definitely geared for Brandon. So Brandon, how do you engineer for oxygen entrainment?
Yeah, that's a great question. One of the biggest, I guess, fears that we have from some of the customers that we deal with is O2 issues with regards to VRUs. There's certain things we can do. So a lot of our VRUs and stuff nowadays, we have a more robust, I guess, piping design and package setup where we've eliminated leak points with things such as socket welded fittings, flanged gaskets, increased testing procedures and pull points within the manufacturing process that ensure that we're capturing any type of leak points before they get out to the field. Use of specifically designed gaskets or O-rings, things to ensure that we're not pulling anything in. And then we can also do things within the package outside of a design perspective, but using things like an O2 analyzer with a divert valve downstream to, we do bring anything in and it's over a certain threshold. We're able to divert it to a flare until we can figure out what the issue is. It's not uncommon. We've used it in quite a few situations. So it really depends on the customer's appetite for something like that, kind of what they're thinking, what they're looking for, a couple of different ways to do it, but it's definitely not anything to shy anyone away from using VRUs, especially in a tank application where we have seen some hesitancy in that, with the proper mitigations and engineering putting into it, it's really not an issue. It's a thing of the past. So
awesome. David, this is a follow-up on something you mentioned, I believe. So how much downtime do you build into VRUs, and does it change state by state?
The answer is it varies tremendously. It's pretty much operator preference. We do get some input from the VRU company, and then if there's any past performance we can look at, that's an interesting metric to take into account. But typically it's up to 10 to 12 events per year is what we're looking at, and those can be from 20 minutes to an hour in duration, depending on what the VRU company can think they can bring the unit back up. In certain situations, we build in a lot more downtime, to be honest with you. And then in some situations, we don't build in enough. So it depends on what the operator wants and thinks that they can maintain with their facility design and the way they're managing it through their operations team.
How often can you change that up? Just my own follow-up here. Do you vary that year over year, or is it longer?
Well, you just need to resubmit a revised permit. You know, if you build in too much downtime, then you're obviously going to exceed certain emission thresholds. So it's kind of a challenge. You know, you have to balance building in enough downtime without triggering the next permitting level. And so that's the key. We really try to maximize that so that you're at the permit threshold you want, but you're building in enough downtime that gives you a comfortable, comfort zone there for uptime.
Awesome. This is a tough one. I'm gonna propose this to either one of you. What is the ROI of vapor capture if we're facing negative gas prices?
I guess I can start. I think the ROI is really, it has nothing to do with the gas price necessarily. In this case, it has to do with controlling your emissions to the point where you're in compliance. And so it's one of those really difficult things to calculate into your ROI, but an enforcement action can cost a great deal of money. And it's nearly impossible to estimate how much that'll cost because either it won't happen because nobody notices, or it happens and then it's a tremendous, you've seen these enforcement actions in the millions and millions of dollars from major operators. So it's just a very difficult thing to build into your ROI. It's more of a gatekeeper kind of thing where you either do comply or you don't. And if you don't, your risk is going up on an enforcement action.
This one's actually very related to that. Does Platinum offer a VRU economic calculator tool? And if so, can you go through a quick example showing the value of VRU gas that is otherwise vented or flared? Brandon, do you want to take that?
Yeah, we do. I don't have it. It's something our sales team will use whenever they put together performance quotes. But we do absolutely have them. It'll show you everything from how many months it takes to break even, your costs, etc. So in most cases, I think our break evens for VRUs is under a year, and I think the higher the VRU goes, the quicker it is. I mean, I've seen some in the 4 or 5 month term to break even. So yeah, I know we do. Again, it's not something I typically utilize, but it's definitely something we can follow up on, play around with some if we need to.
Awesome. Great question, Will. Okay, so your VRUs use reciprocating compressors with rod packings, and if so, what's the most common issue operators usually face with those seals, and how can it be avoided? Great question.
Can you repeat that one again, Michael? I missed the front end.
Do your VRUs use reciprocating compressors with rod packings? And if so, what's the most common issue operators face with those seals, and how can it be avoided?
So we're almost exclusively oil-flooded rotary screw on our VRUs. When I came on, there was a large push to move away from recips due to venting through crankcase. So we're like 99% rotary screw VRU. We do have the ability to provide recips for certain customers if they want them, usually smaller models, smaller Quincy's, 20, 30, 40 horsepower. So a lot of that time, that stuff is used on old legacy equipment that, for whatever reason, the customer has an affinity for them. So not the best one to answer that question, but hopefully that provides a little insight.
Yeah, that's great. Oops. And keep the questions coming. I'm going through them. Here's another one specifically for Brandon. Are you using analytics or AI to predict downtime or performance degradation? There you go.
Yes, we are. And it's something that we're doing as we're continuously improving Pulse. I think we're pushing towards kind of a revamp of the way we do some of that. But we do have algorithms in that filter our data through and try to identify, if the data is over certain thresholds and we start to flag it. If we flag it, we have so many flags and we get over a certain percentage, then it creates an internal checkpoint that we have our team look at to see if we can address certain issues. And we have it divvied up into different categories. We have mechanical, we have oil system related stuff, we have tuning, and we have electrical things. So, we pull in data such as like power consumption, amperage, torque, etc. through our VFDs. So we take that data in and then we kind of, again, sift it through an algorithm, get certain percentages, flags out of it. Once we hit a threshold, it creates a checkpoint for our service team. So, so AI specifically, so the analytics is one portion and the AI is another one. It's something that we're working on currently right now. It's not something that we're actively utilizing, but it is something that we're trying to implement into the system to try to help us analyze this data more effectively.
Yeah, I'm really excited for that. Okay, any other questions out there from the audience? I think the ones I haven't asked out loud we've answered in the slides. Looks like that's it for now. So we've got a few more minutes. I'm going to go ahead and wrap things up by getting to the exciting tease I had promised earlier. So before ending, we wanted to give everyone who's listened to this webinar, registered for it, even if you pass it over to your colleagues, we want to give you this offer of a free VRU pilot. So the way we'd like to offer this is we'd really like to pilot this on your most challenging site and understand what your metrics are for success, your conditions, whether it's uptime, anything else. We would like to understand that before going in and engineer a solution that's going to meet that challenge. So if there's anyone that would like to take advantage of this offer, just reach out, let us know, and what sites you're thinking about, and we'll get the process started with site assessments and everything else. But we want to offer that out to the industry, and I'm pretty excited to see what comes back. And then last but not least, you can download the PDF of the slide deck and reach out to us with any other questions. This is going to be recorded again, but here's our contact info if you need to get in touch. I'd really like to thank David and Brandon for joining me here. I would just be babbling if it weren't for your subject matter expertise. So thank you both very much. And David, we really enjoy working with you and your company. So we're looking forward to much more of that in the future.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, there's no other questions or anything else from the audience, so I guess that will conclude today's webinar. But thank you so much for attending, and we look forward to seeing you guys on our next one. Talk to you all later.